my rock and my salvation. Amen. You know, the issue of food scarcity and hunger is something that does not happen just in a modern context. Today, Judy shared with us a reading about Elisha feeding over 100 men with just 20 loaves of barley bread. Now, from my understanding, these cakes, or these little barley loaves, were about this size. They were enough for one person. You didn't generally share your barley bread. Just as often as you might know, not many people share their rice cakes. Anybody a rice cake fan? Not many here. All right. Well, you don't share your rice cake either because it is just what sized for one. It's interesting how this barley cake, or this bread that was used to feed 100 men and then have leftovers, is provided in the same fashion with Jesus. That people had come from all over the area to see the miraculous signs that the Son of God would do before them. That people were ill, people were sick, and they needed the hand of God in their lives, reaching out, touching them, making them whole. But often is the case when you hear a pastor preaching for a long time, guess what happens? Folks get hungry. In fact, some people might have gotten hangry. Can you imagine that? They sat so long that things began to happen in their brains and they needed to hear the Word of God, and Jesus knew exactly what they needed. Jesus asked for Philip to be a person of faith. That it's not just money that achieves the feeding of the 5,000, but it is the willful giving of what a small boy has. 5 loaves and 2 fishes. You know, oftentimes in the early church when they would paint a picture of Holy Communion, it was not a picture of bread and wine. It was actually a picture of 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Do you know that in the Gospel of John, communion does not take place? We don't hear that story in the book of John. But what we hear is that during the time of Passover, Jesus collects 5,000 people. People who are from all walks of life. Across many different ways they lived and they came together. And Jesus sat down with them and broke bread. When I think of poverty and children wanting more, I often think of a young boy named Oliver Twist. In fact, I included a little picture of Oliver Twist in your bulletin this morning, and he's holding a little loaf of bread. One of the most iconic scenes is from the musical where little Oliver comes up to the randy old man and says, "Please, sir, may I have some more?" And what does the man say? "More! More!" The reality of it is, in God's kingdom, there is plenty for all. That God provides enough to eat, both spiritually and physically, that there is more to be had. That God reaches out to us in our hunger and says, there is more. As a United Church of Christ, we provide an extravagant welcome. We reach out to those who do not have enough. We are people that provide more. I recently heard a story of a woman named Fausta Rosalia. Fausta Rosalia is a restaurant owner in Tijuana, Mexico. After Hurricane Matthew in 2016, many of the Haitians that had lived there couldn't survive on their tiny island, so they went to Mexico to hope that they would find entrance into the United States. As they were waiting for permission to come into the country, many of them felt homesick. Now, Fausta Rosario was a cook of all cooks. She cooked the best quesadillas in all of Tijuana. She cooked the best tacos in all of Tijuana. She was known for her good food. But guess what? The Haitians were homesick. They wanted the food of their people. So 5 women came and talked to Fausta and said, "Can we just use your kitchen once? We would like to make our own chicken with our own spices." See, Fausta says that the Haitians like spicy food, but nothing like the Mexicans do. Oftentimes, this Texan, when he cooks for you, you ask me, "Oh, is it spicy?" The same thing's true with the Haitians. "Oh, is it spicy?" So after they cooked, Fausta began to think. She began to think, what would Jesus do and how would I provide an extravagant welcome? Now, I'm putting a little words in Fausta's mouth at this point. But she began to think. And she changed her menu. She now serves 5 Haitian dishes at her restaurant. People come from miles around. The over 2,000 exiled Haitians that live in the city of Tijuana on the border of Mexico and U.S. come to her little cafe and eat home-cooked Haitian food. You know, I think of this meal, this barley and this fish, and you know, I find that Jesus did not offer them Brussels sprouts. Jesus offered them good home cooking. Jesus offered them something that they would relish and they would love and that would connect them to their people. See, Jesus enables us to reach out and think about ways that we can feed and develop the gospel in a world that is ever changing. See, as a people that are a people of the gospel, we don't simply say, well, if they don't like what we serve them, then they can starve. A people that are a people of grace, a people that are looking at ways in which we truly can feed people, say, what would minister to you, body and soul? So here's the question today. How are you going to minister to people where they're at? Do you say, here's the gospel, take it or leave it? Or do you say, let you taste and see the goodness that God has provided for each of you? See, the ministry of God is not an us versus them. It's not something that we just do to other people. We do the ministry of the church together. What do you think is in every church in this country besides the Bible? Besides the cross.
Food.
A church cookbook. A church cookbook. A church cookbook says what are the local delicacies in your church. If you have nothing else but you have a church cookbook, before you come to a church and you read it, you know what to serve. The church cookbook of God is something that feeds people's minds and hearts and souls. It's something that's rib-sticking. It's something that enables people to walk and talk and live the good news of Jesus Christ to all. This week, my prayer is that you will reach out in love, serving the extravagant welcome that comes to us through the still speaking God. That you realize that there is always opportunity to offer more. Amen.